Okay, so today's topic is creating a mean stack application that is protected using Passport.js. Okay? So let me create a new project, just a generic project, and I'll just call it Passport.js. Okay. Right. So this is local to me here. There it is. There's nothing there, so it's empty. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use npm to initialize the project, this project as a Node.js project. And this is going to go through several questions on what do I want to call it. This is going to create that package.json file, right? That tells me, what other modules does this project depend on. Right now, it doesn't depend on anything because we haven't installed anything. So it grabs the default name for the project as the parent directory. So it's Passport.js. Version, it assumes that it defaults to 1.00, but you can change it. Description, so simple, mean, stack, web application, secured with Passport. Yes. Endpoint, index, test command, no test command, git repository, keywords, author, license. Okay, so this is the initial package.json that is going to create. Right there it is, right? Package.json. And in our, we can refresh this and see it here. There it is, package.json. Okay. Notice that there are no dependencies yet, right? But obviously we are going to be depending on several other modules, including Express, Passport, and several other modules. So let's first create our server application. Right, just let's get it started there. So the new JavaScript, and we'll call it server.js. And in here, we want to use Express, so let's go real quick and copy some of that starter code from Express.js. So let's copy that. Okay, let's save that. And just to verify that this is indeed working, we're going to come here, and if we try to execute that server, it's going to complain saying that there is no Express module. Right, that makes sense. We've done this quite a few times. Let's install the Express module, npm install express -- save. That's going to insert the dependency into our package.json file. If we go and look at package.json now, notice that it has changed and it added a dependency there, right? So there's nothing new there. If we restart the server, if we try to restart the server, notice that it's listening. If we go to 3000, hopefully it's there waiting for us. There it is, hello world. Okay, so yeah, so we have a basic server running. Okay, let's add the other stuff that we usually add. So that we can serve public content and parse the body, right? So let's do all that real quick. So find public. There it is. So let me copy that. Plus body parser. Find body parser. There it is. So let's copy this. And let me paste it here. Let me rearrange a couple things. So these are the two new modules that I depend on. Create the Express application, and then tell the application that it should use these other modules, right? We wanted to use body parser. We wanted to be able to parse JSON. We wanted to parse things that come in the as parameters, as URL encoded, things that come from a form, and also we want to serve up some things that are inside of the public directory. Yes, right. Let's make sure that we can serve things from the public directory. Let's create a public directory here. So public, and in here we'll put here a file, a simple file that says hello world. Okay, so in here should be h1 hello world. Okay, but notice that this is going to be mapped to index, right? We already have something that says hello world. We're gonna comment that out. Let's see if it works now. But it shouldn't, right? Because it's depending on body parser and Multer, right? We haven't installed those yet, right? So if we try to run node server, is going to complain saying I don't have body parser. Let's install that real quick. npm install body parser, save, and Multer. Okay. All right. If we go to our package JSON, we'll notice that the two dependencies have been added. Yes. Remember, these dependencies are important later on when we want to deploy this on a server on the cloud, right? That it too needs to install all these packages, right? And the way it's going to do that is going to open up this package JSON. It's going to look at it. It's going to look at it and says, oh, okay, I depend on these other packages as well. I'll download them and install them locally on the cloud. Make sense? Locally, it doesn't mean much, right? But if somebody's using our project other than ourselves, this definitely allows them, right, to install all the other libraries that they need for our application to run on their servers. Make sense? Okay. All right. So let's see if this works. Let me restart the server. Restart the server. Okay, it's no complaints. And when I go back and I refresh this, remember that hello world was coming from here, right? This hello world was coming from this, right? We just commented out. Instead, now it's going to come from this index page, right? If I refresh, notice that that's the index page, really. Okay, it's really this index.html. Right? That slash is mapped to that public directory, right? Notice it's the same thing. The index.html is the default file if I don't ask for any particular file. Right? If I just say slash, right, the server is going to say, well, you didn't ask for any particular resource. You must mean the index file. Okay, so by default, it goes in and serves the index file. Make sense? Okay. All right, so nothing new here. What we want to do is create several views here that are served by Angular. That allows us to navigate to certain portions of our application. So let's make two or three pages. Some of them protected, some of them not protected, right? And see how would we enforce the fact that we are logged in or not, and what can we see? Make sense? Right. So first, let's get Angular installed here. We need here a JS folder for our JavaScript files, a CSS folder for our styles, and let's copy that from our downloads. Let's see. Okay, we need jQuery. So let me paste that in my JS. There it is. What else do I need? From Bootstrap, I am going to copy. Actually, let me copy everything here. I'll just paste it in here. It says yes, override. So I have everything there. I have fonts, the CSS for Bootstrap. I have the font for Bootstrap. I have the JS for Bootstrap. The only two other JS files that I need are from Angular, right? So let me go back up. I believe there's somewhere in my downloads folder, Angular. Where are they? Oh, they were here somewhere. Angular. Oh, there they are. Let me copy them, and I'll paste them inside of my JS directory. There they are. Okay. All right, so we're all set. We're going to load up a couple things here. First, the CSS. I'll go to CSS and load up Bootstrap. Rel style sheet. So nothing new here. Let's load up the scripts. Let me load up first jQuery. And I have here, let's see, what do I have here? I have jQuery. What else? I need a couple more, right? I need Bootstrap, although we're not going to use it too much. Bootstrap, there it is. We're going to load up maybe Angular. And then the router, Angular route, right? Angular route, there it is. Plus, we'll need one more JavaScript, right? Which is going to be our client-side application, right? Which we usually call as app.js, right? So let's load that, which we don't have so far, but we'll build it. Let's see, app.js. Okay, it's complaining that it's not there, but that's fine. Let's create one, and we'll create one in a minute. Let's create a body. And the body is going to be controlled by an Angular app, and we're going to call it our passport app. All right, so it's an application that illustrates how do we use passport authentication mechanism. Okay. Plus, we're going to have here a div. There's going to be our ng view. This is where we're going to inject all our content. Okay. By default, we'll inject our home page, right? But if you click on a profile link, it should navigate you to a profile page if you're logged in. If not, it should kick you back to some kind of login page. Make sense? All right. So let's create some of those pages, right? Let's create some of those pages. We'll put them in a folder, maybe called views, and under there, we'll create the views here. Maybe we'll do home.html, right? And this will be maybe h1 home. Okay, and then let me just copy this. Call this profile.html, and profile.html. I'm just going to change this to be profile. And then I'll have login.html, and here's login.html. Login. Okay. All right. Right now, these pages are not protected. Yes. If I go to my server and I go, if I go, views/home.html, there they are, right? They're there, and I have profile, right? They're all there. And this is login. They're there. Okay. Obviously, we're not going to navigate to these files this way. Instead, right? Notice that the way we're navigating here is that we are reloading these pages, right? We're physically fetching those documents, brand new documents, right, and reloading the browser to render this brand new page. Instead, we're going to use Angular routing mechanism to, navigate between these pages, injecting the content into our ng view, right? What we've been doing for the last couple of weeks. Yes, right. We call those applications single page application, right? We're only ever going to go to the index page. We're only ever going to load this index page, and then the index page will inject other content in there. Okay. All right, so the way we do this is that in our index page, notice that we are loading the app.js. That's where we're going to declare our passport, right, app, and that's where we're going to be do all the routing and whatnot. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go to JS and say new in our new JavaScript, right? So we're going to call this app.js. And in here, we're going to create our application. Var app is going to be angular.module and it's going to be called Passport app, right? That's what we called it, right? Isn't it? And in here, then is the dependency, right? What modules are we depending? We're depending on only one module, which is the ng route. That's what's going to allow us to route on the client side, right? Notice this is on the client side. Remember that we configure this routing saying where do we want to go, and the module is called ng route. Okay. All right. Okay. So what we want to do here is now configure the ng route. Let's go to a cheat sheet on how to configure that. Angular JS route provider. And there's a few examples here. Maybe not here. And route, maybe? Route for an example. There it is. Right, so what we want to do is have some kind of navigational, right, links that allow us to navigate to different portions of the document, right? And then inside of our script, create a configuration that will say, you know, when should we go where? Okay. Let's see. So let's copy this config. Let's copy this config. Right, and basically what we're going to do is app.config, and the configuration is going to pass us, is going to inject the route provider, which allows us to configure the routing mechanism, right? That says, you know, what content should I inject for what URL pattern, right? This says, if you see in the URL, just plain all slash, you should display the following content, home.html. Okay, let's not have a controller just yet. No resolve. Okay. If you instead see /profile, you should display the profile page under the views. Okay, no control yet. Okay. If you see login, then you should go to the login page. Okay. So yeah, so what this does is configures and says, if you see /, what are we loading right now if we go to /? We go to index page, right? That's what we're doing, right? The index page. What we're doing here is says we're saying if you see /, instead inject home.html into the index page. If you see /profile, then inject the profile, the content of the profile into the index, and so on and so forth, right? So let's see if this works. Let's see if this blows up. Reload. Looks like it didn't work. Let's see what it's complaining about. Unexpected app.js. Did I save app.js? App.js is there. JS. Index. ng. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So let's reload there. Let's see what it's complaining about. It says unexpected. The app. Did I misspell something? Let me see. App Angular module. Unexpected. Is it not loading AngularJS? It's there, right? AngularJS. Passport. AngularJS. I didn't even misspell it, did I? Let me see for a second. CD plus public. Everything's there. JS. There it is. App.js. Ooh. So it looks like it's there. What are you complaining about? Let me see. Angular.module passport app, ng route, uncaught syntax error, unexpected end of file. More app. Let me see, just a second. App. Just hello. The server. Let's start the server. Console hello. Injected failed to instantiate module passport app. Passport app due to module is not available. Okay, yeah, I know. And Angular. Okay, Angular is there. Angular module is there. Passport app. Am I spelling something? Angular.module passport ng route. Okay. Looks like magically went away. Must have misspelled something. Oh, okay. Here we go. Again. Console. Source. Password due. Password is not available. You either misspelled the module name or forgot to load it. You register a module, ensure blah, 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 blah. Index. Am I loading it? No. Angular, Bootstrap, jQuery, Angular, ng route, app. ng app, ng view, and passport. I didn't misspell this, did I? No. Module passport app is not available either. Index body ng app body. What are you complaining about? See what I did here. Public index ng app ng controller ng view. Nothing different. App Angular module app config. You see any difference? Passport, Bootstrap, jQuery, Bootstrap, Angular, Angular route, app, body, ng view. Do I have another server running? No, I don't have another server running. No. That port taken? Maybe another port is taken? Use another port. Public is working, right? 80. No module. Module passport is not available. You either misspell it. No, it's not available. You either misspell the module name or forgot to load it. Registering a module, ensure that you specify the dependencies as the second argument, which I did.
Changing your module name, something that's like all lowercase.
That's for one. No, passport one. Index. Am I editing the right app? Passport.js public. Close everything. Close all. Index. View. Passport. App. One. This is spelled correctly, right? NG app. Goes away. We start all over. Delete. Okay. Did I put it in the wrong directory? No, I didn't, right? It was in here, right? New, other, web, index. I want to have all this stuff in head, maybe? It's being anal about that. And, let's not have this. Let's not have that. And app, you just want to say hello. Console log, hello. Hello. Hello, okay. Of our app. And this would be ng app. What I call it? PWQ. Wow. Do I have the wrong version of Angular? 1.3. 1.3. 1.3. 1.3. No. Interesting. No. Modules? No, it's not modules. Okay, I am going to go to the one that does work. Let's see. Let me verify that indeed this is working. Error event. Oops. See what I. Oh, I think I have already something running on port 8080. Let me close all this. Close all. Let's go to server. And let me start something at 2000. Oh, there's no database. It says this expects a database running. OD. All right, let's see if this works. 88,000. Okay. Well, this is what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted to build for you. Let's go over what I have so far, okay? Let's go and look at index. This is the index I was trying to build for you. It's the same passport app that we were trying to build earlier. And here's our ng view. It's empty. And we have these views down here, right? We have home. And home is, for now, it's just, home, this H1 saying home. Profile is just profile and then displaying current user. We'll see in a second how to show current user. And login is it's just a form, a very simple form that allows us to retrieve username, password. And when we click on login, when we click on the login button, it invokes login, okay, on a controller, right? Nothing magical there. All right. All right, so home, other than this, which we haven't looked at just yet, what is this? This is just saying, go to my controller, right? The home controller, and in there should be a current user. Yes. And that current user should have a first name and a last name, and it displays it. Okay. In profile, also same thing, but it displays it as an object, including right first name, last name, username, and whatnot. Also in that username, there is going to be an array in there of roles, an array that tells me all the roles that this user is in. And if that roles contains the string admin, then it will show this div. If it shows student, right? If the roles array contains student, then it will show a section for the student. If it contains a string instructor, it will show a section for instructor. Make sense? So depending what role you're in, it will display different sections. Make sense? All right. And login is just a form. In our app.js, which I was trying to build for you, we have our Angular module. There it is, right? So that's nothing strange there. And here's the route configuration, right? That if you click on slash, you go home. If you click on login, right, you go to login. If you go to profile, you go to profile. And each one has its own controller: home controller, login controller, and profile controller. So nothing new there. Yes. So that should be you should already be familiar with that. The controllers are down here. So I didn't bother making controllers in separate files, but it would have been preferable to have them in separate files. But I have them all in this file. Okay. So we have here are the controllers. Here the home controller is not doing anything. The profile controller. In the profile controller, I used to have a logout button, which I don't anymore. That logout button used to call this here. Since I don't have the logout button anymore, I'm just going to erase it. I don't have the logout button there anymore. In the login, so the home controller is not doing anything really, and the profile controller is not doing anything really. The login controller is doing something. Let's see, what is it doing? It's it does bind to a button, the login button. There it is, the login button. When I click on login, what's it doing? It's invoking a login function on the login controller, right? So it's going to call a function called login. It's going to pass the user, this user, right? And there it is, right? So here I have the user. I'm passing just username and password. And what does it do? It uses a security service. I don't like that name, security service. Maybe authentication service, maybe. But anyway, the security service, it's a centralized service, right? And notice that it's being injected. There it is, which is basically a place where we're going to centralize all our login, logout, right? Everything that we have to do to verify that this person exists, right? We're going to centralize all that behavior in one place. It's going to go out to the server and ask, is it okay if this person logs in? Okay. And what is it going to pass? It's going to pass the user object, right, with the username and password. And it's going to respond either with null, right, or not null, right? If right? Whether if the user exists, it'll come back with an actual user. Right? If it doesn't exist, it'll come back with null. Okay. In either case, I'm going to try to go to profile. I'm going to try to go profile. Okay. What else? Let's see. What else we have here? Here's the security service. The security service declares login and logout. Okay. Login is the one we just called 2 seconds ago. This one, right? Login is going to call login and going to pass the user object that has a username and password. Yes. The username and password are here in this object, and it's going to go out to the server and say, "Hey, this user wants to log in." Right? Here's the user with the username and password they typed in the form. Right? The server is going to compare the username and password against some database. Right? I have it hard-coded, right, in the server, but it could very well go out to the database, right, and compare to see if they can find a user with this username and password, and it's going to come back. The server is going to come back. If the user exists, it'll come back with an actual user object. If not, it'll come back with null. The username will be null. Okay. All right. What we're doing here is that we're storing the user that comes back from the server. We're storing it in a variable at a particular scope. Notice that we're not storing it at $ scope. Okay. We're storing it at root scope. Right. Root scope is a larger scope. Right. Remember that the $ scope is for a particular controller. Right. Each controller has its own scope. Remember that. Right, each controller is responsible for their small individual piece of real estate. Yes, root scope is kind of like the highest level scope, right? That can be viewed across all controllers. Right, all controllers can view this. And the reason I did this is that I wanted to be able to see the current user on all pages, regardless of what page I'm in. Right? I always want to remember who the currently logged in user is. Make sense? All right. That's why in home, when I say current user first name, current user last name, this current user is not from home controller current user, because remember the home controller is not doing anything, right? Right. And also in profiles, notice that I'm also displaying current user. See that? Right. Again, the profile controller is not putting any current user variable here, right? Again, it's at a higher level scope, so the current user object can be viewed anywhere, whether it's null or not null, right? It can be viewed anywhere. And who puts it there? The login, right? This login puts it there. Root scope, current user, equal user. Make sense? Right? And then once I log in, I call you back, right? With whatever the controller called me or the controller called me. I'm going to respond with a user, right? So here's the login. Here's the login, right? I call login, and I'm waiting for a response. It passes me the user in this variable, and I then try to navigate to profile. I try to navigate to profile. Notice that nowhere do I have logout. The only place I have logout is in another controller, in nav controller. So nav controller, what I did is in index, notice that I have ngview here. See that? See I have ngview down here? I put a set of URLs outside of the ngview, right? So that, because this is like a shared header, right? It's a header that is across all pages, right? I always want to be able to navigate home, right? I always want to be able to, if I'm not logged in, I like to be able to log in from anywhere, right? Depending on where I am, regardless, I like to be able to click on logout to log out, or I like to try and navigate to profile. So this URL, this set of URLs are available everywhere, right? And it's this top level set of URLs at the top. Okay, all right. Notice that I have 3: home, login, and profile. So I have home, I'm showing login, I'm not showing logout, and I'm showing profile, right? Because notice that I have an ng show saying if there is no current user, meaning this what object is that? That's the object that is in the root scope, right? Which currently is null. Nobody, I haven't tried to log in, so current user is null, right? Or undefined, yes. So login is showing, but if current user is defined, right, and it's different than null, then I won't show login. I'll only show logout. Make sense? Right. So if the current user object exists, I can only log out. If it doesn't exist, I can only log in. Make sense? So these two toggle, right? They toggle one another. If I log in, I can only log out. If I'm logged out, I can only log in. And profile, right? So anyway, so notice that there's one. Notice I can navigate to login. I can navigate to login, and that's because of this, right? In the app, right? If I click on login, right, and this is what it is, right? Notice that down below is /login. If you could read that, that takes me to login. It's because of this over here, login, right? Because of that route. If I click on home, right, I navigate there because of this rule. Yes? Okay. Well, I have a rule for profile. If I click on profile, I should navigate to profile. Okay. But notice what I have additionally here. You see that? Right? I have something else here. If I try to log into, if I click on profile, it's not going to let me. It doesn't let me. Okay. What happens here is that it's gonna say, before I let you navigate here, and before I instantiate this controller, first I am going to try and resolve this. Okay. What happens here is the following. Notice that I have something else here. I have an HTTP provider. You see that? Right? This HTTP provider, right, is another service, right? This one over here, the route provider, is for, is for being able to define very well-known URLs, right? Very well-known URL patterns, right? I know I'm going to have /. I know I'm going to have login. I know I'm going to have profile, right? I know that you want to navigate to these places, right? And I want to handle them correctly. Yes. But HTTP provider is a more generic type of controller, saying a service that allows me to intercept or handle any URL, meaning any URL that you want to look at, it first has to come through me. It first has to come through me, right? So I am going to intercept. I'm saying, hey, HTTP provider, as you are typing URLs and you click on enter, I want to look at that URL before anything happens. I want to intercept. I want to look at it. Okay, right? And it's going to evaluate the interceptor. Right? If the interceptor evaluates successfully, right, whatever response come from the server, whatever response was already slated to see, you're going to see it. Meaning, I am not going to do anything, right? If everything is dandy, you will see what you would have normally seen. If something is wrong, if something goes wrong, if there's an error somewhere, okay, I am going to instead execute this portion. So I can configure two functions. This function if everything's okay, or this function if there's some kind of error. Right? So the way this is going to work is that where is it? Where is it? Yeah, so I want to invoke this function check logged in before anything happens, right? So here's check logged in. So check logged in, what it does is that it's going to go out to the server, It's going to go out to the server. It's going to try and hit this URL here, logged in. Right? It's gonna hit logged in, and logged in is gonna. I need to explain something before I do logged in. Let me explain login first. Let me explain login first. Where's login? Let me explain login first. All right, so if everything goes fine and I click on login, right? If I click on login, it's going to go out to the server, right? It's going to provide a username and password. If the server successfully logs you in and says, yes, you are a valid user, right? I found you in the database. What Passport on the server, what it's going to do is going to respond with a 200. It's going to say successful, right? And it's going to ask the client to set a cookie, right? For Passport to be able to remember that indeed you have already been authenticated, okay? It's going to set a cookie so that next time, right? It's not going to ask you to log in again. It's only going to look at that cookie, right? And says, oh, we've had this conversation already. You already provided my username and password, and I have successfully set a cookie for you. Okay, right. So that's what login does. And let's look at how that works. Right. So this goes out to login. Let me show you the server on the server side. Where's the server? Server, so public server. There it is. All right, so on the server side, we have a couple of things here. We have the same Express libraries that we were using earlier, right? We have the body parser and multer that we had earlier, right? So nothing new there, okay? We have Mongoose, right? Same thing, nothing new as well, right? We looked at that in previous lectures, okay? Here's a couple of new things, right? We're going to add Passport support, right? So we need to install that library, doing npm install Passport, yes. Also, we want to be able to parse cookies now, right? Because the way the mechanism is going to be, I log you in. If I successfully log you in, I am going to set a cookie saying that you have already authenticated, and I need to be able to parse it. Just like we weren't able to parse the body. Remember that? And we had to install a library to be able to parse the body. Well, same thing. We need something to be able to parse cookies. Okay, that is not a standard module that gets installed in Node.js. You need to install it separately. Also, we want to be able to keep a session variable for you. We want to keep track of you using the cookie, right? What happens is that when the cookie is we're going to store information in the cookie enough that will allow us to decrypt it and say, oh, it's you again, right? And we wanted to reinstantiate a session object that maintains information about that particular user, right? So Node.js has its own session mechanism. Express wraps an API around Node.js's implementation of session. It's a prettier API. So here we are loading Express implementation of session, right? Also because Passport uses Express's implementation of session, right? So it needs to be there, right? All right, so not only did we load Passport, we also need to be able to set up how are we going to authenticate. There's many different strategies that we can authenticate. We can authenticate simply by username and password, or we can become a little more sophisticated, right? We can authenticate you using Google, right? That you have to log in with your Google account, or with your Facebook account, or with any number of other strategies that we can authenticate you. Okay, we will look at those other strategies later on right? When we start talking about ASP.NET and whatnot, but we'll consider other strategies. We're gonna here for to get us going, we're gonna use the simplest authentication strategies, which is called local strategy. Okay, which just uses username and password. Okay, all right. Let's see, body parser. That we had that already, right? Body parser URL encode. That's the same thing. We already had that. Multer. We already had that. Okay. Here's session. So session, right? This is again, this mechanism is going to allow us to maintain a session for the user and store that session information as a cookie in the user's browser, right? So that the browser, every time it comes along, it's going to provide that cookie. Yes, if they don't have that cookie, then we're going to assume that they have never tried to log in, right? And we're going to assume that they're not logged in, right? So we're going to force them to log in. If they do provide a cookie that we have provided, that we know we generated, and that and it's a valid cookie, then we're going to run a logic saying that, oh, okay, so it's you again. I know you've authenticated already, so you can go through. Now this cookie, because this cookie, we're going to send it over to the client, meaning it's going to live in the browser. Those cookies are public, right? Anybody can look at your cookie, right? It's just text that lives on a file on your browser, right? Because it's public, that cookie would be susceptible to be tampered with. Okay, people can try and steal session information, right? People can try to generate their own cookies, right? To try to fool our application into thinking that they are actually authenticated. Yes. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to provide a secret. Okay, this secret is it's a key, right? That the session mechanism is going to sign the cookie. It's going to sign it, right? It's going to sign it with this key to verify. It's going to encrypt it, and it's going to decrypt it using this key, right? So this way, the session mechanism can be sure, right, that the cookie that they're receiving, right, was generated by them. That was generated by Node.js. Make sense? Right? Now, obviously, this would only work in a development environment. For us, for testing purposes, typically you don't store the key here. You would put it in a separate configuration file or something that can be read later more securely. Yes, but for development purpose, that's fine. And it could be any string, doesn't matter. It can be any string. That string will be used to encode or encrypt the cookie. We then tell the app to use cookie parser, right? We loaded it, right? So we added it. We initialize the password. We say password, get ready, let's go, wake up, and then we say passport. I want you to use session, meaning I want you to not ask to log in every single time. If they have already logged in, look in the session to see if they have already logged in, right? Don't ask them to log in every single time. See if you have a valid cookie, right? And if they've already authenticated, just let them through. Make sense? Right? Now, this session has to occur after this session, right? It has to be in that order. First, express session has to start, and then passport's expression has to start. Okay? It has to occur in that order. Everybody okay? All right. Woo! Okay. That's the public directory, right? That's nothing new there. Okay. Here's some data that would typically live in the database, right? And then what we're gonna start configuring Passport. We have to tell Passport. How should Passport validate that the user that is trying to log in is a valid user or not? We have to tell it. We have to tell it by giving it a function. We have to say, hey, whenever you get a user, this is how you're going to validate that that user is valid or not. Okay, Passport doesn't know. Right? We have to say, hey, Passport, this is how you're going to validate. Okay, and the way we do that is we're configuring Passport, saying, hey, Passport, use the local strategy. Right, local strategy. Basically, what it says is that it's going to parse. It's going to intercept. Passport is going to intercept, right, all incoming requests. Right, it's going to intercept all incoming requests. Well, not all of them. The ones we want to protect. Only the ones we want to protect. And for those that we're protecting, is going to pass them through. It's going to pass them through this function here, right? That is declared inside of this new object of local strategy. That is going to read username and password from the form. It's going to parse the form, and it's going to pass it to this function. Okay, and now it gives you three things. One of them is, two of them are obviously the credentials, right? The username and password credentials that presumably are coming from the client, right? Initially, they will come from the login page, but next time it'll just be from the session. Okay, it's gonna check to see. We're gonna tell it how to do that, and we're going to report. We're going to report back to Passport, telling it whether we agree that this is a valid user or we don't agree that this is a valid user. Okay, by using the done function. So it passes us the credentials and a function that allows us to report success or failure. Okay, whether that person is successfully logged in or not. Okay, so what are we doing to verify that this user does exist? What are we doing? Something very, very simple, something very trivial. We're just iterating over our arrays of users and comparing the username and password with the username and password that is coming from the request. Okay, very, very naive, right? We're just comparing the username that is being passed against the array and the password also against the array. Very simple. If they both match, if the username and password both match somebody, right? If they match somebody in this array, what do? We return null for an error. The first argument for the done function that is being passed to us, the first argument is an error, right? If we want to report an error, you know, if we weren't able to connect to a database, or if we failed somehow to authenticate the person, network was down, I don't know, whatever, right? If we fail, we can report a failure. Here we're reporting success. We're saying, yay, we found the user. We have the user, we found it, okay? So we report back with the user that we found. This is the user object that represents the user that we did find. This is the user. So that user has all sorts of information, right? If we type Alice, the user will be this object. Yes? With first name, last name, roles. Notice that Alice has admin, student, and instructor. See that? Has an array of roles. So Alice is in many roles, whereas Bob is only a student, and Charlie Brown is only an instructor. Okay? Everybody good? Notice that even though this is naive in that we are iterating on an array, you can very easily extend this code to go out to Mongoose, right? Go out to MongoDB and do a find, right? Find, and then you provide as filters the username and the password, right? And then it would check to see if that username and password do exist. Obviously, here we're passing passwords in the clear, right? Meaning there's a form, you're typing, and the password is being passed through to the server, you know, unencrypted. In a real environment, you would not pass it in unencrypted. You would be using SSL, right? The server would be configured to use SSL so that all the data would be passed encrypted. Here is also the passwords. Notice that we are assuming that the passwords are also stored in our data model as clear. That also is not good practice. Typically, those passwords would also be encrypted, also in the database, right? So that not even an admin user would be able to look at your password, right? They could change the password, but they can't view the current password, so they can't log in. Anyway, but we'll talk about encryption a little later. Anyway, so if we're successful, we are going to return null for the error and the object that represents the current user. Yes, we're going to say so. This is successful login, successful authentication, right? Whether it's logged in or not, that's another issue. If we did not find it, iterating over all our users, we're just going to report null for the error, false for the object. We didn't find it. We did not find it, so we're going to return false for the user, and we're going to return some kind of message saying unable to log in. Okay? Everybody okay with this? Right. A couple other things here is that the user, as the user is coming, as the user is coming from the cookie, because the cookie is storing a session, right? It's storing some session information, and it's storing information that represents a user. That user needs to be stored in session, right, and retrieved from session. Okay, so it needs to be reconstituted, right? For that, Passport, if we are using session, which we are, you need to also implement these two methods, right, which serialize and deserialize the user from session. Okay, and finally here we are here we're creating a function that we are going to use to intercept all incoming traffic for certain URLs, right? So for instance, we're going to say, we're going to create a function here that we want that function to always be called. We want always this function to be invoked before certain things occur, right? What we're doing here is that in the request object, Passport adds a couple of things to our request, right? Remember that the request has a whole bunch of things. Remember, we've seen request.params, right? We've seen request.body, yes? Right, we've seen all that. Well, Passport adds a couple other things in that request object, right? Passport adds a function to that request object, is authenticated. Okay. Remember, Passport, the way it works is that it intercepts the request, right? It's this here that we rendered here, right? Passport is here. It's intercepting all traffic that is coming in, right? And parsing the request, right? It looks at the body. It looks for username and password from a form, right? It deserializes and deserializes session information about that user. So it's doing a lot of work in between here that we would normally have to do ourselves by hand, right? Passport does that for us for free. So one of the things that Passport adds is this function is authenticated. Okay, is authenticated is have they do they have a cookie, right? If they don't have a cookie, have they provided a username and password? Have I already passed it through the function that that compares username and password against the valid users, right? Right. If it passes all those, whether I have a cookie that is a valid cookie, or that they have a username and password which are valid, that they pass through their request form submission. If they're authenticated, I'm going to say yes. What this says is notice that I'm using this auth here to protect this URL. If I type /hello, if I type /hello, I say, no, you can't access that URL. You can't access it because you're not authenticated. Okay? What's happening here, notice that typically, how do we do this? We didn't have this auth here, right? If I remove it, and I restart the server, right? And I try to hit that hello again, notice it says hello world. You see that? Yes? Right? But by putting the auth here, I am saying, hey, before you let access into this hello, run this function, right? We call these inserting a middle tier inside of the chain, the request chain, and so the request chain starts off with many layers, right? And eventually makes it up to this endpoint where the response is. The response is the end of the request, right? Meaning we have gone through, we've processed all the requests. When you get here and you start generating the response, that means that the request is over, right? We cannot continue processing the request because we are already sending something back as a response to the client, right? But anyways, what we're doing here is that we are adding, one more middle tier before we get to us. What are we doing? We're saying, okay, notice that it has exactly the same request and response objects, right? It's going to use passports mechanism to see if we're already authenticated. If we're not, we are going to respond with a 4.1. That's where, right? That's where we get this unauthorized, right? Notice that if we look at the network, in the network, this was a 200. See that? It was successful. If I now do a hello, I get a 4.1. See that? And that is an indication that you are trying to access pieces of the server that you don't have access to. You're unauthorized to access that content. The content exists, right? The content is there. I'm just not allowing you to see it. Okay, it's not that it doesn't exist, right? If it doesn't exist, I would have gotten a 4.4, right? If I type something else, right, I get a 4.4. You see that, right? And for that, we have other middle tier that is handling that, right? I never generated the 4.4, did I? Right? There's other middle tier that handles that before it even gets to us, to the server, right? But hello does exist. It's just that I'm not letting you see it. And the way we're doing it, we are programmatically generating the 4.1. See that? We are programmatically generating the 4.1. This is an indication. We're going to use this 4.1 on the client side. We're going to use it in Angular. We're going to use that 4.1 to say, oh, wait a minute. That means that you need to log in. I'm going to use that in Angular to redirect you to a login page. See that? Right? If from Angular I get a response of 4.1, I am going to do a $ location, right, and redirect you to the login page, right? Remember, the redirection happens in the Angular side, not on the server side. Okay. All right. So yeah. So we are protecting this hello. We don't want to say hello unless we know who you are, right? We have other URLs here, right? And what we're doing here is that we would like for the client to be able to query whether the current user is logged in, right? And it's going to do the same thing, right? It's going to say logged in is not going to say 4.1. You're not authorized. Basically, it's going to tell you whether you are logged in or not. Okay, it's not going to tell you. This is trying to access something This is for something that we know that you're trying to access something that you're not allowed to access, right? So for instance, all the access to database methods to create, to insert, to update, to delete, right? We want to protect those, right? Definitely want to protect those. Not if you're not logged in do we want to give you access to those, right? Here, if you're authenticated, we're going to use the request, same function that we have here, right? Right. If you're authenticated, if you are authenticated, we're just going to respond with request user. So request user is an object in the request, right? That it is maintained in the session, right? In the session, remember that we responded with a user object. Remember, we responded with a user object, and that is maintained throughout the session. If you are authenticated, you're just the same user. If you're not authenticated, we're just going to respond with a 0. It says, nope, you're not authenticated. Sorry, right? So yeah, so the client is going to use this to check to see if you're logged in. If you're logged in, I'm going to get the object of the currently logged in user. If I'm not logged in, then I'm just going to get a 0. Login. Login. Notice that the URL, right? Login. We are putting in between. We're saying that before you get to us, I want you to authenticate the incoming request using the local strategy. What local strategy is that? It's this one up here. It's this one, the local strategy. Meaning intercept the login. Presumably when you click on login, you're submitting a username and password, right? You're submitting a form with username and password. I am going to intercept that incoming form submission, and it's going to be processed by this function. I'm going to parse out that username and password. I'm going to check to see if you do exist. If you do exist, I am going to respond with the user that I did find. I'm going to put it in as part of the request. I'm going to put it as part of the request, and then I'm going to let it through, right? Notice that I'm not aborting. It passes through. I'm going to respond with the current request user. This request user will be either an object, will be this object that we found, will either be this object that we found, or it will be false. It'll be this object if we found you, or it will be false if we didn't find you. Okay, it will be this object here in the login. And log out, right? If we call from Angular, if we click on log out, is going to hit this URL, and it's just going to say request.log out. What that's going to do is going to throw out that cookie, right? It's going to make the cookie invalid, right? And say, well, no, if this cookie is no good anymore, so that next time, right, if you try to use the same cookie, I know that's not the cookie that I gave you, right? Because I store all that information in the session, and I send back saying successful, right? Yes, you have successfully logged out. From the client, let's look at this. So let's see. When I hit in the security service, when I am in the login, when I go to the login page, and I click on, so I'm in the login page, and I click on login. When I click on login, this is the controller that handles that, and it's going to use the server security login. The security login goes here, right? There it is. It's going to post login and the user object. The user object has the username and password, right? Let's instead of posting, I'm just going to do a console.log user. I'm going to go to login. I'm going to refresh so we can see the traffic here. I if I type Alice, do login, notice that that's what's being passed in the service, right? There it is, this console. So I am passing an object to the server that has username and password properties. Yes, that's good. That's what's going to go to the server, and that is what when it gets. How does it get to the server? It gets to the server right here, right? As a post. Notice that it's a post. See that? It's a post. Yes, that's the URL. There it is. That's the login. And I am passing the user object. That means that the request inside of the body of the request, there is an object that has username and password. Everybody okay? Right? So who's going to handle that? This guy's going to handle it. Yes? So what we're going to do here, let me put that back. Okay. And on the server, I'm going to not. Well, actually, yes. Let me print out. I'm gonna do console.log over here. Log the user and the server side, and restart the server. Okay. So if I click Alice, right, and I do a login, okay. Oh, did I refresh? Alice. Do a login. Notice that the server, that's what the server saw, right? And it's printing out the object that is inserted by Passport. Passport went through the array of users, right? It found it, and it put that object inside of the request.user. Okay, so now the request.user has that object with the roles and everything. See that? Roles. So it grabbed what object? This one, the first one, Alice. Everybody okay? All right. That goes back. It puts it in the root scope current user, right? And it calls back where? Let's see. Login. Where's login? Login. There it is. Login. There it is. So what this is going to do is says, okay, no matter what, I am going to do /profile. I'm going to try to navigate to /profile. Yes? Let me try to navigate to /profile. Well, it looks like it navigated to profile. See that? It navigated to a profile. Let me log out first. Let me try it again. Let me go to profile and try to do something else, right? I'm going to do login. It's not going to profile, even though it says that after the login, the callback says to go to profile. See that? Yes? Why did it not go? Right? All right, so what's happening here is that, first of all, it went to the server. It went through that request, yes? And it did not find the user, yes? So this request user that came back in the login, notice that it came back with 0. See that? That's 0? See that 0? That's the false, right? That's the username that came back. But it says here that no matter what, I am going to navigate to profile. See that? Where regardless of whatever the server says, I should go to profile. Why did it not go to profile? Well, what's happening here is that notice I'm using location.url profile. Yes, right? Which should trigger this rule here. Should trigger that rule. See that? Right? And that rule says, wait a minute, before you navigate to profile.html and you instantiate that controller, you first have to check to see that if check login is resolved, right? Which is this function over here. Oh well, actually right here, right? it intercepts all URLs that are incoming. It says if you got a 4.1, which we did. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. No, not this 4.1. I'm sorry. Not this one. It's this one. Check logged in. Check logged in, which is this one over here. Where are you? There it is. This check logged in. Right. It says so. First, run this check logged in. First, check whether you are logged in. If you are, then I'll let you navigate to profile and I'll instantiate the controller. Right. So what this is doing is that it's going back to the server to see if you are logged in. Right. And here you can see in the URL, check logged in. Oh, it did come back with a 4.1, didn't it? Yeah, it did come back with a 4.1. Oh, okay, so it's this one over here. Yeah, this 4.1. Yeah, the status came back as 4.1, and then it navigates to login. Yes, sorry. Yes. This check login is going to be used when I try to come back later on. Without logging in, right? Without logging in, and trying to hit this page. So, for instance, if I navigate away, say I go, if I go to home, right? If I go to profile, it's always going to come back. Check login. Notice that it's running check logged in. I try to log in with something with garbage, right? I log in. It comes back with 4.1, and it kicks me back to the login page. But once I do log in, Alice, right, and I do log in, I go to profile, right, and now if I go to home, and I can always come back to profile, and it's always just going back to check logged in, right, to make sure that that cookie still exists, that cookie is still good. I can reload, right? It remembers, right, that I am logged in. It's not that I'm storing it at the client side. It's being stored at the server. I always go back to the server to retrieve this. Okay. Oh, have we run out of time? Anyway, I pushed a simpler version of this to GitHub. Right. So I think it's a little bit easier than this. This goes a little bit further into database, and I'll push this as well. So please feel free to use this as a starting point to build projects. Okay, wait, let me, no, don't go yet. Just a second.